Hello, my name is Carol Rico, and today I'm going to be talking about prosopagnosia. So first we're going to do a little bit of an exercise. I'm going to have you try to remember the face on the next slide. Okay, are you able to picture that face out of the lineup? Okay, now we're going to do the same thing, but I'm going to have you remember a series of numbers. Can you tell me which series is the one that you just saw? If you're like most people, being able to remember and recognize the face was a lot easier than being able to remember a series of numbers. Prosopagnosia is also known as face blindness, and it's the inability to recognize people's facial features. And I'm doing this project on prosopagnosia because it is something that I struggle with. And the best way that I can explain how I deal with face blindness is understanding and looking at people's faces is the same as remembering a long series of numbers. It's difficult and it takes a lot of time and energy to commit to memory. I realized that I have this disorder after reading the book Holding Up the Universe by Jennifer Niven, which is about a young high school age boy who realizes that he has prosopagnosia, and it's about his discovery and his diagnosis. And that's why it's my favorite thing to talk about in sensation and perception. So a little bit more about what is prosopagnosia. So it is a neurological disorder where someone struggles to recognize or even perceive at all faces. And extreme cases of prosopagnosia include not being able to recognize even loved ones at all, even after seeing them every single day. It usually occurs in 1 in 50 people, and sometimes it comes along with deficits in remembering objects and scenes as well, but it doesn't have to. So some common signs and symptoms of prosopagnosia. The first is difficulty keeping track of characters in TV shows and movies. So if you see a character at the beginning of a movie and then you don't see them after a couple scenes, most people can remember who that character was after seeing them 10, 15 minutes ago. Someone with prosopagnosia might not remember them and may not have been able to recognize or commit their face to memory. So it makes it very difficult to follow along plot lines of media. Another thing that people with prosopagnosia have trouble with is imagining faces or picturing faces in their head. And lastly, because there is such a difficulty in recognizing and remembering faces, most people rely on clothing or someone's hair or their body type or their gait to recognize them. So there's two different types of prosopagnosia. The first one is acquired prosopagnosia, and this is when you're not born with it, but you develop it from some type of brain trauma, stroke, or degenerative disease. And it's usually a lot easier to pick out because there's such a big switch up between recognizing faces and not being able to recognize faces. And then the second type is developmental prosopagnosia. This is the type that I have. It is it is present from birth, and it is due to neurological impairments of the facial recognition mechanics of the brain. So a little bit about how the brain is organized when it comes to recognizing faces. The most common areas, or the most important areas for this, is the fusiform face area, because this is the hub of where facial recognition usually happens, as discussed in the textbook. But there are, as you can see, all these other areas that are used to recognize faces as well, because it's a very complex mechanism of the brain, and even some damage in some of these other areas can have a hard time translating facial analysis to other areas of the brain. So a little bit more about where the dysfunction is. Again, like I said, the main is the fusiform face area and also the fusiform lingual gyrus as well. Less so, but there is still evidence that the amygdala and the temporal cortex can have deficits within them as well, but it's more so in the connectivity or with complex facial expressions or facial emotions. With developmental prosopagnosia, the disconnection is a lot more common between the anterior and posterior face networks and reduced function of facial recognition mechanisms, whereas acquired completely depends on where the brain trauma is located. And here is my works cited for this project. I hope you enjoyed and you learned something about prosopagnosia. Thank you.